What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast, as a proud partner of the Set Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac, coming at you with a preview of the Packers playoff matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. Their first playoff game in what will be just about 2 years after they had taken a hiatus last year at the end of the number 12 quarterback for the Green Bay Packers era. But now, the
You
Jordan
say
Love,
hiatus. You say hiatus as if they had a choice in that.
they
I guess they
did. They
did.
could have
I guess
won.
they did.
They could have just won, and it wouldn't have been a hiatus. But
Yeah.
regardless, sweet listeners, that is the smooth, sultry tones and voice of my lovely co-host Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. I'm looking forward to a Packers playoff game and podcasting about it. And hopefully it's not a grand opening, grand closing.
It certainly might be. We'll get into it, but
Surely might be.
I think, as we've said all season, this season is gravy, and this game is also just gravy. Like, I say that not in the moment of watching a playoff Packer game, but I also say that believing that if they lose, alas, if they win, awesome. But we'll get into more of that a little bit later once we get score predictions and players to watch and things like that as we wrap up in about an hour, maybe hour 20 if we get a little rowdy. But first and foremost, we have to go through the cheese board of this past week's Week 18 win against the Chicago Bears because the Packers obviously secured their playoff spot with that win over the Bears, and a lot of players had a lot of good stats. Even though it was only 17-9, we have a decent amount of players up for cheeses. One, two, three, four, five, six, eight of them. So I
To be
will.
fair, I could have probably included at least one or two more, but I felt like, we got to have a cutoff at some point.
Right. Probably should just cut off at some point. But I think all the players that are on here, I think, are very, very much willing and I should say deserving. So I'll clue the listeners in right now. I have absolutely zero idea of who I'm giving a cheese to, let alone three, because they all did very, very well. But we're going to start it. Actually, we're going to go bottom up because we always start with Jordan Love, and I want to start with Jordan Love right now. Um, First up is Devonta Wyatt. One tackle for a loss. That one tackle was for a loss. Four pressures and one sack. Uh, a 50.9 PFF grade, but he's really coming along and getting those pressures up, and I think has had a good sophomore year, regardless of the counting stats that go with him. So next up is Kenny Clark. He had two tackles. One of those was for a loss, five pressures, and a sack. There's been a lot of sacks in this part of the podcast, everybody. Um, Graded 75.9, so still pretty good. Next up is Carl Brooks, who has lit Packers Twitter on fire with hype and gotten him noticed, and I think was probably the catalyst for a lot of Packer fans and a lot of national media to go back and look at this 2023 draft class with a lot of, I guess, with rose-colored glasses. But that's not exactly what I'm trying to say because it actually is really, really good. Looking at it fondly is, I guess, what I was trying to say. Carl Brooks, two tackles, both of which were solo, both of which were tackles for a loss. He had three pressures and one sack. All of that on 17 snaps. 89.4 PFF grade, the highest graded Packer during this game. So he definitely had a great game, and I think is going to be a problem for um, interior offensive linemen for years to come if he keeps at this pace. Next up is Quay Walker. Nine tackles, six of which were solo, one for a loss, three pressures, and one sack. I think this sack was like the gang sack on Justin Fields, where like five players ended up getting this sack. And then 76.1 PFF grade. Onto the offense. Jordan Love, 27 of 32, 316 passing yards, two TDs, a sack, and a 128 passer rating, and one lost fumble on that scramble broken play. Um, was named PFF's Breakout Player of the Year. I think that happened today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
He had an 80.
NFC Offensive Player of the Week, too.
Yep, I think he was the NFL Player of the Week, if I'm not mistaken. Because I think I saw a poll from the NFL
Possibly,
or
actually.
whoever it was, and it was like him, Josh Allen, and somebody else who I cannot think of. But I think he had just squeaked out Josh Allen. Um, to get that spot because they both had pretty decent weeks. Um, I'm trying to vamp a little bit as I go back through my retweets to try and find that poll, but I don't think I'm able to find it fast enough for it to matter. Regardless, he won it last week, and uh, if he did win it for the NFL Offensive Player of the Week, he should have won it again. But alas, that's now too much scrolling for me to go back and find. So next up is Aaron Jones, 22 carries, 111 rushing yards. His third straight game of 100 plus rushing yards. Still no touchdowns, but that's just fine. 5 catches on 5 targets for 30 receiving yards and 80.4 PFF grade. Um, Always the bridesmaid, never the bride for Aaron Jones the last 2 weeks, but I think he's just fine with that role as long as he's helping the team win, which clearly because 20 carries, I think, in the last 20 plus carries in the last 3 matchups, and all have been 100 plus yards. So him being healthy and being able to get going has been absolutely enormous for this stretch of Packers games. Jaden Reed is up next. 4 catches on 4 targets, 112 receiving yards, a 73.3 PFF grade. 59 of those coming on the beautiful pass from Jordan Love out of the pocket, on which we found out on Monday, I believe, or post game Sunday. I forget if we had talked about it in the post game, but that play was not designed to do that. They had Dontavion Wicks over the middle, wide open, and Jordan Love said instead, "Oh, Jaden Reed's open. I'll just pass it to him to go for a big play." So great job on both ends there. And last but most certainly not least is Dontavion Wicks. 6 catches, 7 targets, 61 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. 77.6 PFF grade. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Jordan, we have to hand out some cheeses, and I haven't the slightest of who I'm going to pick out of this list.
I have one for sure.
I think I might as well, but go for it.
I think we have to do Jordan Love. I know the fumble is it's a big, you know, con or counter, but outside of that, it's a near perfect performance. And we could say, was it all on him to get the offense going? No, it wasn't. Like Aaron Jones could equally, I mean, we might give it him and cheese by the end of this. But I think between as good of a performance as Dontavian Wicks had, obviously caught both of the touchdown passes. Um, Jordan Love is pulling the right strings, highest passer rating of the season, any game that he had. Another 300-yard game. He really saved the best for last, and it's hard to ignore, I would say.
I would agree with you. That wasn't my for sure pick, so I won't get into an argument about Jordan Love's cheese because I don't think that it's worthy of an
Because
argument.
once we're locked in, we're locked in.
You
I mean,
can't
that's
change
the
him.
thing. I know, but if you're willing, if you want to hold, that's fine. Where is your initial instinct line?
My
Because
initial.
also,
Go ahead.
I think you had mentioned post game that you felt Preston Smith should be in this category. He's not even on this candidate list. In part because I looked at the stats. I was like, you know what? The problem with the defense is that everybody's stat line is almost identical. So
Yeah.
how do you parse
How do you
out,
parse it out? Yeah.
you know,
My initial probably for sure should get one is Dontavion Wicks.
I think that's very fair because 2 touchdowns, those are the trump cards.
Mm-hmm.
Also
And
just a hell of a game too.
right, I think he just is deserving of those, and he had such great routes on those touchdowns. Like you have to go with that context of he was open for a reason, and it's because he was pretty good at getting open to catch that
Exactly.
touchdowns, I should say. That was my first sure that I think I wanted there. You, what is your inkling? You obviously we can bump around, we can bounce around our arguments.
See, I think again we talked about it maybe not last week, but the week before. Maybe it was last week, doesn't matter. Um the holding love to a higher standard. So you'd probably look at the skill guys like Aaron Jones, 3 straight weeks of 100-yard rushing games. Again, he didn't get in the end zone, but made an impact in the passing game. Dontavian Wicks, 2 passing touchdowns or 2 receiving touchdowns. Great game by him. Basically, was the leading receiver in terms of targets, and Bears didn't really have an answer for him either. So it's a different kind of equation that we're solving than the defense, where like everybody made a play on defense. Everybody made a lot of plays on the offense, and then it's like, well, you tip the scales of what weighs out more, kind of thing like that. So I think at some point, probably doing the list initially, I was going to suggest Wicks is a lock, but someone's throwing the ball. That's
Listen,
you
and
know,
I'm not afraid or like saying we don't need to give one to Jordan Love either. Excuse me, but I'm just trying to think of. I should say think of. I just think that
you're making the
Don,
cases.
yeah, Dontavian Wicks' case for where he's come from and what we expected out of him, I think
Yeah,
is lower than what Jordan Love's is. Like,
agreed.
I think Jordan Love still has a pretty good case for one. I feel more strongly about locking in Wicks over Love at
I
this moment.
am getting the highlighter out.
All right, that's one.
Octavian Wicks, lock.
That's one. Um,
Aaron Jones.
See, this is the issue. I think if we just went with Jordan Love, Aaron Jones, and Dontavian Wicks, that'd be more than reasonable to do. But I don't think you can. You just can't have a. You can't have only offense in this where in a game where they only scored 17 when they
See
defense
that
held them to nine.
that's the problem though. We know that this is not a 17-9 game.
Right, and that but like that's what it is. Like
I know
it looked a lot better than that, but at the end of the
it looked a
day,
lot better.
they didn't find the end zone. Like more, I should like they didn't find the end zone at a lot of the end of their drives, clearly. And it was a fast game. They time of possession went. I should say time of possession, but the game went very fast. There
Tiger
was,
game, yeah.
yeah, it just went really fast. There wasn't a whole lot of stoppages in the first half, and that's just in part of the play calling on both sides of the ball. But they only held them to 3 field goals. The defense did, and so I think we need to have a defensive player there. So do you want to have? Do you want to go with a defense? Do you want to have the Jordan Love and Aaron Jones discussion first, or do you want to have the
Defense, because
discussion?
this is gonna be the hardest one.
Okay. You want to do defense first then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carl Brooks is the most fascinating case because 17 snaps, you think, well, he was on the field or on the field for a third of the snaps
Mm-hmm.
at most.
Mm-hmm.
Yet the impact that he made in those 17 plays were palpable. Like it stood out on the screen without anybody going through all 22, without anybody sharing those clips on Twitter after the fact. Carl Brooks changed this game. And again, do you reward the person that may not have a volume of plays compared to Quay Walker,
Right.
Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt? Devontae Wyatt too. I again, PFF is not it's not infallible in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I did not agree with this grade because I think between 4 pressures, a QB hit, and a sack,
Yeah.
like you know what I'm trying to say. Like he had a
Yeah. No, I
really
know.
good pass rushing game, even if
Yeah.
plays that
I
he
don't
got
know
beat on.
why he got dinged so hard for tackling. He had like one missed tackle. I don't really know why that's dinging him so much, but I digress.
Yeah,
Same thing with Preston Smith. Preston Smith had 2 missed tackles, but I don't think that's really knocking of. It drops them down to like 30 on the
yeah.
grades for their tackling grades, but regardless, um, I don't know. I think like there's a strong. I think I'm leaning towards either Carl Brooks or Kenny Clark because Carl Brooks was so efficient with it, but on the
Mhm.
flip side, Kenny Clark had the same amount of tackles, had 2 more pressures, and I think is the more impactful player in the middle. Does that make sense?
I no, I think, and I generally try to keep this in game by game basis. Kenny Clark also did this on 39 snaps.
Right.
Um, I try to keep this like contained to the game,
Hmm.
but Kenny Clark really finished the season strong.
He
Like
did.
I'm it that's where like it, but at the same time, if we use that same logic, wouldn't that apply to Aaron Jones as well? Like now that we're, you know what I mean?
Right. Nope. No, I totally get it.
But
I think like part of it for me is that like on PFF doesn't have a good run defense stat. They have stops, but
that stops.
that is a excuse me, that is a stat that does failure of an offense. So a sack is a stop.
Yeah.
So what I am going to have to use as a crutch is their grade on rush defense, of
Yeah.
which Kenny Clark was pretty good. He had a 70.6 versus Carl Brooks dropped down to 59. Again, that's only 7 rush defense snaps. So like there's a lot of noise there.
Versus 18.
Right. And I think that like for all intents and purposes, the running game from the Bears was largely held in check, right? And I think that's kind of like the idea is that the theme throughout the game was that the Bears couldn't run the ball and they were getting pressure on Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And with the second part being equal, who was the better run defender? I think it in general was Kenny Clark, just based on the grades and what we saw during the game, frankly. Not again, that's just my Kenny Clark argument for it, and I think just because he obviously played almost, or he did play double the snaps that Carl
He
Brooks
did
did.
play double the snaps.
So I think that's my lean is to go Kenny Clark. Do you want to make a Carl
Gotta
Brooks
get
argument, or are
I'm
you?
kind of pulling towards the bricks. One, he's not on the cheese board. Not that that
Oh,
is the
he's
end all
not.
be all. He is not on the cheese board.
Fuck it, throw him on there. He deserves one. Honestly, he deserves one. He's been good all year long.
Yes, he
Like
has. This
he deserves
it
one.
was a true coronation of the glimpses and flashes of talent that we've seen from him,
Yep.
especially late in the season. Like again, Kenny Clark kind of took up a lot of shine on the line, but then
Yeah.
Devontae Wyatt got in the mix. Then Carl Brooks, like he's made plays probably consistently the last like 4 weeks in specifically, and then you'd see it before this, at times during the season where it's like that guy has something.
Yep.
New Mike Daniels, that's what I see from him. Just
Wow.
bringing that. That's my comp. That's my
That's
comp with him.
that's high excuse me, high praise.
It is. He's got something. So Kenny, or sorry, oh good lord, I was about to say Kenny Brooks. That's the guy from Eastbound and Down. That's not. I'm joking.
Close.
It is close. Carl Brooks, Bach,
All right. Aaron Jones and Jordan Love. Please remind me how many cheeses Aaron Jones has.
2.
And he's played. I gotta find the the page for Aaron Jones here. I'm just trying to see how many games he's played this year because I think he's missed a good chunk, and I don't want to.
Which
Ha-
I believe we gave him a cheese after the Vikings game.
so 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Excuse me. In 2023, he's played 11 games. So would 3 cheeses be too many for his 11 games? I don't think so. Because
Oh, you're
of
leading a different direction than I anticipated.
I don't think so because of the importance that he's had the last 3 weeks.
I mean,
Like,
hell, we gave him a cheese in that first Bears game, and he played all of 11 snaps.
yep. Like I think that's just like he got one for this first week, and then the last two potentially. And I think like that'd be more appropriate because I think what we have talked about last week is that the cheese board is meant for recapping the season, and if it wasn't for Aaron Jones, this we probably not have this discussion in a preview of the playoffs this week. And so, does Aaron Jones being lifted up one more cheese do the season justice and how you're going to talk about it? Or do you give it to Jordan Love to say he was that good this year? I know.
This is the it's really hard to kind of come out or come down on this because Aaron Jones, again, three straight 100-yard games, played really
First
well.
time, again, I have no idea when. I didn't see anybody get back to me on how long it had been since there had
It's
been
got to be
three
Amon
straight.
Green too. Like if it was back to
I
back,
don't
if
think it is. I went back to Amon's game logs. I don't think it is.
really,
Go vamp and I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it's not him.
um, but really, like again, we knew the importance of not having Aaron Jones and how long that just had gone on for chunks out of the season. And it could be an entirely different Packer season if Aaron Jones had played every game, not maybe every snap, obviously, but he changed the dimension. It Jordan Love is again we the math changed very quickly on him where he is kind of the buoy. He has buoyed the Packers and to get into the playoffs, Aaron Jones put them over the top. I don't know. That's it's the floor ceiling thing. Ceiling is the roof,
The
as
ceiling
Michael
is the
Jordan once said.
roof. Um, Almon Green did do it. He did it in uh, October into November 2006. He had a stretch there where he had
2006
yeah,
with the Packers.
yeah,
He was on that team.
yeah.
No way.
Why would I lie to you?
I don't know.
That was his last year as a Packer. Well,
Well, but
before
yeah,
he
yeah.
came back in 2009
The of that real,
of that real era. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He went 118, 106, 122.
He played that late with the Packers. I feel like, yeah,
He went
that's
on a
crazy.
stretch in the middle of 2003 that's absolutely bonkers, where he went 176, 118, 139, 35, 137, 192, 109, 154.
He was so good. We
He
could
was
have an
good.
Amon
Green
Green like
episode.
gushing. Yeah, a guy
So
that like
that
now like.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah,
But
we got to get the
the
cheeses.
the point being, yeah, we're spending a lot of time on this one. The point being is that what is that? 2006, almost 15 years or over
That
15.
is 17.
Yeah, since they've had a three-game 100-yard rusher. Because I know that James Starks and Ryan Grant, none of them did it.
No.
So I am leaning Aaron Jones, but if you think it's Jordan Love, I will concede Jordan Love. I don't feel strongly either way. I know it's hard. Are you breaking it out again? I think we might have to. 2 weeks in a row, folks. Fitting that the last two cheeses of the year for a team getting hot at the right time would need to be decided by mere fate. Who's who, Jordan? Who's heads? Who's tails?
Um. What?
What is your deal? You looking at a coin or what are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at the back just to see. I was gonna see if what state this was. The war in the Pacific will help determine who gets the final cheese of the 2023 Green Bay
Oh
Packers
man!
season.
All right.
Okay, heads will be Jordan Love.
And the
Tails will
war in
be.
the Pacific will be Aaron Jones. All right, go for it.
All right, let's flip.
He
God.
dropped it. He dropped it. We are off the rails. Okay, heads is
Okay,
Jordan Love. Aaron Jones is now.
the state of Minnesota
No, you
will
can't use
help
that one.
us.
You can't use that one.
We have to. Heads, Jordan Love. The state of Minnesota, Aaron Jones. It's heads.
Think the Omen. If it was tails, was it going to be good? It's tails.
Especially if it was the War of the Pacific. Jordan Love, you get the final cheese of the 2023 Green Bay Packers season.
Alrighty. And that does it for the cheese board, folks. We will tally up all of them in an episode uh after the season's end, whenever that may happen, and as we go through grades for everybody on our own grades. So hope you guys check in and look forward to that. But without further ado, I think it's time to talk about the matchup at hand. The Green Bay Packers against the Dallas Cowboys. The Packers and Cowboys have a long, illustrious uh, history just going head to head in the regular season, but uh, even more so in the playoffs. Most notably, if I'm not mistaken, I said this wrong when we first started the podcast. The Ice Bowl, not a championship game
No,
from what I learned a mere year and a half ago, but that's probably the most one of the most famous ones. To go with the few that have um, come along in the Aaron Rodgers era. So this will be the ninth meeting between the Cowboys and the Packers in the playoffs, tying. I'm not sure if it's for the most, but tying the San Francisco 49ers for the most postseason matchups over the years. They both have faced the Cowboys and the Niners have both faced the Packers 8 times, or I'm sorry, 9 times with this coming Sunday's game. Packers are 4-4 against Dallas in the playoffs, including having won the last 2 meetings, which were under Aaron Rodgers. 2-4 playing the Cowboys in Dallas during the playoffs. Historically, Bart Starr was 2-0. Then they went on their losing streak with the two middle quarterbacks, Lynn Dickey and Brett Favre. There's more quarterbacks in there, but ones that face him in the playoffs. And then 2-0 under Aaron Rodgers. And now we'll see if Jordan Love can get his first playoff win against the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is going to be an awesome, very fun game. I think just a fun history game, if nothing else. Um, the Cowboys are 8-0 playing at home this season and have won all of their home games by 21 and a half or more, which is,
sorry.
oh, what was that? What did
Uh,
you say?
an average of
An
21
average,
and a half points.
which is still pretty crazy, regardless.
That is still pretty crazy.
Um, the Packers are 5-0 playing in Jerry World, aka AT&T Stadium. Um, one of those are playing the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. So they're 6-0 in the stadium itself, um, including the Super Bowl 45 win over the Steelers. So if you're a Packers fan, you like going down to Dallas. It's fun. There's a lot of a lot of fun to be had down there. Um, but I think most notably going into this game, the Cowboys are 11-5, and like I said earlier, they were 8-0 at home, but uh, 4-4 when facing teams that are 500 or better, and then obviously they lost that fifth game on the road as well, losing to the Cardinals, the 49ers, the Eagles, the Dolphins, and the Bills, having two back-to-back losses in weeks 16 and 17, I believe.
Mm.
So, um, like I said, Cowboys are 4-4 facing teams that are 500 better. Packers are 4-3. So both teams hovering around the Mendoza line to have a baseball crossover of record against middling teams, or against good teams, I should say. So, with all of that, Jordan, before we get into it, do you want to give any contextual fun tidbits about the history?
Cowboys have represented um interesting points for various eras of the Packers. Obviously, you mentioned Ice Bowl. That is probably the most. It's not a Super Bowl win, but it. I feel like that is maybe that has to be the most like vintage Packers victory ever.
I
In
think
part
it,
because
yeah.
it's the goal line, sneak goes through.
Which hilariously, if you I think everyone who's like a pretty good Packer fan has seen the picture of Bart Starr QB sneaking like into the end zone, and then yep, I forget who's behind him,
It's
but it's their
um
fullback, whoever it
it's
is.
Chuck Mersine, I think it is.
They're so smart.
I watched a lot of Packers stuff
Um,
when I was growing up.
but he's holding up his hands in the shape of a touchdown, but not because it was a touchdown. He was holding them up because at the time it was illegal for a fullback or running back to push the quarterback forward,
No
which
tush
is
push.
which is very apropos
Yep.
of now 2023 2024 when the tush push has come back. So
Yep.
That's just a
Chuck
little.
Racine, also Milwaukee native. I did not know that previously.
Didn't know that either. So, but regardless, I thought that was pretty. I was thinking about that this week as we were prepping for the pod. It's like, oh, what a little like coincidence that uh, it's come all the way back around that they had banned it and now it's allowed again. Probably
Yeah.
getting banned again this offseason to a rulebook near you. um,
Um, but it's very interesting, like Packers dynasty of that time with Lombardi, those big games between the Cowboys to get to the Super Bowl represent like, you know, the big fireworks finale. And then the baton eventually is carried off to the Cowboys with Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, 70s. They meet, I think they went to Super Bowl like 4 times, maybe not, if not more. Then 90s come along, or I should say, they did meet in the 80s. Lynn Dickey was one of the few bright spots in a terrible era. Bart Starr, for all that we loved him as a quarterback, there are a lot of stories about him as a coach. I recommend The Greatest Story Ever Told, written by Packers historian Cliff Crystal. It just goes, it is an amazing Packers book, first off. It takes a lot of time to get through it, but the post Lombardi before Favre gets there, that window, it's a window, it's not a window, it's 25 years. And you just get into just how bad the Packers were. Bart Starr was the coach for a lot of that, and there's a lot of interesting stories, some of which probably not podcastable. That's yeah, there's some weird stories too. Anyway, that year represents the lone one of two playoff appearances that the Packers make post Super Bowl two victory to when Favre gets to the playoffs with the Packers.
wow.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then this is when I'm coming of age or just being like cognizant of the world and everything like that. But the Cowboys being the boogeyman to the Packers before they broke through and won Super Bowl 31. And obviously, Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, one of the best football teams of all time,
I think you're
obviously.
doing an injustice to the two other players in that team, on that offense. Emmett
Wait,
Smith,
what?
Michael Irvin.
Oh yeah, those two guys. Yeah, yeah. No, they're really good.
Also first ballot Hall of Famers.
First ballot Hall of Famers. And then yeah. It's I don't know, they've always intertwined, and it's like we think of again, it's always like rivalry,
hmm
and it's America's team. That moniker of like the Cowboys have it. That's what
I no no. I'm scowling at you, not at you, at the idea that they're America's team.
I know, but I
I
think that
know
is.
they are. It's what everybody calls them.
Mhm.
And if you do any sort of critical thinking with it, you understand that it's not.
No, but it is a really interesting kind of dichotomy between what the Cowboys represent, especially under Jerry Jones, where it's like big.
hmm
Everything has to be big, 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 like just constantly. We're always in the news, we're prevalent. And then you compare that to small town Packers community team,
Yep.
but they always kind of like, they're what it means to be a Packer versus like I don't know. There's meaning to be a Cowboy too because like people look at that historically.
Yep.
I don't know. It's a very very interesting way of looking at it. Anyway,
Right.
I don't know. I view them on the same pedestal as the Vikings.
Yep.
Sometimes the Bears if they're good.
Yeah.
Like they're
No,
they're
in
they're at
terms of like a
that level.
rivalry, in the terms of a rivalry, they absolutely are like up there for the Packers. Like it's probably solidly Bears, um, Vikings, Cowboys for sure.
Yeah.
And even like to a lesser part, some of like the Niners of like the tens and uh just in general, I think like they've had some pretty good fights over the years. But I know for sure that like growing up as a Packers fan, my grandpa, my I guess two of my grandpas, my dad, and like a bunch of other of like the men in my life that watch Packers and like raised me on football hated the Cowboys. Can't
Hmm.
stand the Cowboys because of the 80s and just the like you said between Super Bowl 2 and the Brett Favre era, and even I guess even the Aaron Rodgers era. Like it was just nothing really ever good was happening against the Cowboys, and
Yeah.
they hated them, just can't stand them. And so I think that has been passed on to me. Frankly, I can't stand the Cowboys. Would love to watch them lose and be bad for ever and ever and ever and ever. But
Yeah.
obviously, that's not going to happen with their owner and the talent that they're capable of acquiring. So, um, yeah, I'm just excited to talk about this game. So, should we get into it?
Yes, we should. I want to ask you, what are your feelings going into this game?
I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I'm like, win or lose, it's been a good season. Um, if they win, I'll be insufferable on Twitter to every just there'll be a bunch of retweets. I'll have stuff queued up for sure. But if they lose, then that's fine. Like the Cowboys are a very good team this year, and uh it'll suck to lose the Cowboys. 'Cause you never want to lose the Cowboys, but I am not optimistic. But in my gut, I'm feeling like there could be a chance. And as you were talking about like the eras and going from 25 years of doldrums against the Cowboys to then at least being competitive with Brett Favre, and then as of late with Aaron Rodgers and how he's played against the Cowboys and Matt Flynn for that matter. Um, I have illusions of grandeur of Jordan Love in his green jersey. I'll say this: wearing green in at AT&T Stadium looks phenomenal. I don't know why, but just the way that stadium is lit, the green list like looks so good in Jerry World. I love it. So
It's lit, all right.
I'm just like thinking of Jordan Love bombs to Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks, and I'm just like I just had a couple of daydreams of little like snapshot glimmers of Jordan Love dicing up the Cowboys, and I'm thinking of the guy who took that picture at the end of the second playoff game they played down there with the Jared Cook
Yes.
game, and he says
Yeah.
they're cheering with a minute 26 left in the game, like that
That's too
picture.
much time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that picture. It gives me so much joy. Um, so yeah, I'm if they win, it's gonna be a great day. If they lose, I will be okay. It's like 85-15 of like not looking great versus maybe they have a shot. But the 15 part is what we're gonna talk about because this team can be beat for sure.
I think that as well. I don't think I think this is probably under the McCarthy era, so this is what, 3 seasons for him? I think this is the best Cowboys team.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think this is the most balanced Cowboys team they've had.
Balance is probably, yes, that is the right word with it, because
Yeah.
I think there are weak links in there, as few as there are, and Dak is a lot better. CeeDee Lamb is arguably the best wide receiver in football. Tyreek Hill and
Justin Jefferson, Cooper Cup,
Justin.
Devontae
They
Adams. Like, there's a lot
they
of really
can
good
make,
receivers.
but CeeDee Lamb made it like a leap this year. That
Oh yeah,
like
for sure. Absolutely. He made
he
a huge leap this year.
yes, and their offensive line, save for one exception, is still really good.
As always.
I think too, like Dak is like I know he's kind of maligned as like, it's not like Kirk Cousins esque, but there is just so much pressure that comes with being the Cowboys quarterback, that if you do not go to a Super Bowl, which they have not done in 30 years, um,
What was it? I think when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys or when he traded for Herschel Walker or whatever it
they
was.
they
He
traded Herschel Walker.
yeah, that
Yeah,
he like promised like I will do this just to get to an NFC Championship game or just to get to a Super Bowl, and he hasn't done it since. I forget
he
what
has
that
not.
stat was.
They have not been to a championship game since winning the Super Bowl in 95, 96.
Yeah, like 95.
Yeah. Or no, they lost the Super Bowl to the Steelers and then they have not been back since.
Got it.
But I think Dak, he's been really good this year, and Mike McCarthy brings on. We know Mike McCarthy very well, and he brings on a lot of things, and he is what he is at this point. At the same time, he's a really successful football coach, and do his flaws come back to bite him? Yeah, I do think they are in the best position to at least make it to the championship game this year. And we'll see if they actually break through and beat the Niners if that comes to pass. And the Niners take care of business because that's another team that has a lot of expectations and a lot of pressure to
And they
face.
already beat him this year.
Yes,
Beat
and
beat the
handily.
bricks off him.
Yeah, the 49ers beat the Cowboys very handily. I just think my feeling going into this game is I'm trying to get past the good feelings of okay, we made it to the playoffs. You got farther than anybody else really expected. Even I expected at various times this season. Looking at it logically, I agree with you. There's like that 85% chance, like, oh, the Cowboys could easily beat the bricks off the Packers
Mm-hmm.
because this is the second best offense, highest scoring offense if you're looking at like raw numbers, like not like expected points added and all those kind of metrics.
Right.
But between that and the defense and just the concerns that I have about what this defense could look like against a top tier opponent, I'm not looking forward to it. But at the same time, the Packers might be well equipped to A, play in a shootout, B, take advantage of one weak link on the Cowboys offensive line, and C, profit off the Cowboys melting down because they, as good as they are, they're very undisciplined with penalties and everything like that.
There is a lot of pressure on Mike McCarthy with Bill Belichick's firing in New England. There's been earthquake level rumblings of a mystery team being interested in Bill Belichick, and I think that is going to be the Cowboys if Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys lose.
Is that
Like,
breaking news?
no, that's been
I
all.
know. No, I'm trying to insinuate that you're the.
Oh, got it. Yeah, that I'm insider. No, speaking of actual reporters for the NFL, talking about Dak Prescott, I saw this tweet today, and this adds to the pressure, and it's also goofy, which I really, really hope the Cowboys lose for really only this tweet. This is from Michael Gelkin. He's the Cowboys sports reporter for the Dallas. I think the Dallas Morning News is what he's. Yeah, the Dallas Morning News. Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott has been reminding himself about the road to the Super Bowl for the past several months. Quote, I've got a lot of Louis Vuitton stuff. Why? Because of the LV. It's because of the LV is Las Vegas. If I look at my bag, it's all LV. Literally. I just went and got my girl a bag the other day, and I'm like, the only, the only the only way I'm getting one of these is with the LV logo on it. End quote. Do you realize how funny it would be if Dak Prescott bought months and months of things worth of Louis Vuitton only for them to crumble in the wild card game against the 9-8 Packers team that's the youngest team in NFL history to make the playoffs? Do you know how funny that would be, Jordan? I would.
It'd be very
Do
funny.
you know the clip of when Stephen A. Smith walked in to the set with the cowboy hat on and the Cowboys jersey? And he's just laughing. That would be me.
Is that gonna be you?
That would be me. That would that.
Sunday's pod.
Yeah, I would just come in. Ah, so that's where I'm at. That's where I'm
Yeah.
at for tone. But let's get into it. We got a lot of stuff to talk about regarding ways that the Packers can win this game. But first and foremost, we got to figure out who they're going to have on Sunday, 325. By the way, in case you didn't know,
Mhm.
not as long as last week, but still pretty long. The good news is that a lot of it is not um, DMPs. A lot is limited or full. But starting with the news of the week for the Packers, Jair Alexander hurt his ankle in a walk-through practice on Wednesday. Rolled his ankle, I believe, on somebody else's foot, from what Matt LaFleur had said. He was a DMP on Thursday. Hopefully he can go because if they don't have him, golly, I don't really know how that'll fare against this offense. So a tumultuous season for Jair continues. Devondre Campbell was a full participant in both days of practice, the walkthrough and today's practice, with his neck injury. AJ Dillon with his thumb and neck was a DMP for both days. Romeo Dobbs had a chest injury that required him going to the hospital, from what I had saw in some pool reporting from I think Rob Navosky and Zach Cruz
He
and the
was
rest of them.
coughing up blood, I believe.
Not ideal. Not
No.
ideal. So he was limited in both days. Romeo, for the love of God, please take your health into account. This is not that important. Uh, Elton Jenkins did not participate in Thursday's practice, but he was limited on Wednesday in the walkthrough with his knee and ankle injury. Having him go is obviously critically important. Aaron Jones with a knee and a finger injury. I think the finger is new. Limited participant in practice both days. Isaiah McDuffie with his concussion and neck injury was limited both days. Luke Musgrave was a full participant with his lacerated kidney, as was Josh Myers with his neck injury. Jonathan Owens has a knee injury. He was limited both days. Jaden Reed, Sean Ryan, and Darnell Savage were all full participants with their respective injuries. TJ Slayton has a knee and a foot injury. He was limited both days, as was Preston Smith with an ankle. Um, Christian Watson also limited both days with his hamstring injury. And then to round out the injury report for the Packers, Zach Tom, Quay Walker, and Emmanuel Wilson, all full participants with their injuries. So, but like I said, the good news is that they only had two DMPs. The bad news is that those two DMPs are pretty critical to the Packers' success.
Very critical.
For the Cowboys, um, they're quite healthy, to put it frankly. Defensive end Dorrance Armstrong was a full participant both days with an ankle injury. Uh, Brandon Cooks isn't on the report anymore. He had vet rests on Wednesday. So Jonathan Hankins, a defensive tackle, was limited with an ankle injury. Malik Hooker, their safety, with an ankle injury, is a full participant both days. And then their guard Zach Martin and their tackle Tyron Smith both had vet rest, and they did not participate. But then Tyler Smith, their other guard, has a foot injury, and he was limited both days as well. And that's about it. So for having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably 10, 11 page or 10, 11 player injury report, only like two of them are actually injured. Not that they're not injured, but
But yeah,
in a
yeah.
way where they're doubtful to
It's
play.
favoring the Cowboys in that sense.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So hopefully all those players up for the Packers end up playing. Particularly like honestly, if all these players play, which I'd imagine they would, except for maybe Isaiah McDuffie and AJ Dillon, uh, then we're in pretty good shape injury report wise. It's just been a long season for the Packers for sure.
Yes.
So getting into it, I guess. Um, why don't we start with the allusions that you had made earlier, Jordan, talking about the weak link on the Cowboys offensive line, because coming off of a week where the defensive front was getting home to Justin Fields pretty often, it would be nice to see that momentum continue into a game against a obviously better unit than the Bears had.
So part of my research prior to this podcast, I was looking up some consistencies with the Cowboys' losses. A lot of them pretty much standard. It's like, okay, you look at the turnover differential, -7, things like that go against the Cowboys. There weren't like a lot of like alarming things. I will say the most interesting thing I thought was out of the 39 sacks that the Cowboys allowed, 18 sacks came in losses this year. So when the Cowboys are getting pressured, disrupting their offense, throwing out their rhythm, obviously that is recipe for kind of defeat. In particular, one lineman stands out. Hat tip to Zach Cruz of the Packers Wire because I saw him key on some of this too. Um, Cowboys right tackle Terrence Steele. He allowed 3 sacks combined over the last 2 seasons. This year, he has allowed 8 sacks, the most out of any lineman on the O line. He allowed 54 pressures on the year, which is the third most of any offensive lineman in the NFL this year. And 4 sacks out of his 8 that he allowed this year came in one game. against the Eagles in week 9. That is pretty alarming. And also, like, it just shows you where the Eagles were and how much they have fallen off. But that is another pass rush that between like Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, that kind of front line, different kind of makeup, I would say, compared to the Packers. But if you have an assembly or like a talent assembled like that has explosive pass rushers, as we saw against the Bears, it's a different offensive line that I'm comparing to between the Bears and the Cowboys, obviously. But with one guy standing out like that can be had, I'd be very interested in like how we see a lot of the rotation between Preston, Rashawn Gary, when Lucas Van Ness gets in there, same for Enigbari. Like the way that all of those four edge rushers are playing lately, that could be, you know, really fodder for something like that. And plus, too, think of the last time we saw Rashawn Gary in a playoff game. I believe he had 3 sacks against that 49ers team. I know we try to forget that 49ers game for a whole lot of other reasons, but
Right.
he was a monster that game. Cheese worthy, I would say, if we were doing a pod.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you keyed in on a great point is that how Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary do against it was Terrence Steele, right? How they
Yes.
do against him is going to be probably not just the game because that's really reductive, but a critical part of this game and how the Packers could see some success. Anecdotally, I tried looking at PFF if they had it in their like alignment counts, but if I'm not mistaken, pretty consistently Rashawn Gary is over the right tackle. Preston Smith is almost always lining up on the left side of the ball, going against their best um, lineman usually. And so, I mean, if that's Rashawn Gary's place to cook, then that's Rashawn Gary's place to cook. Like they'll probably be throwing uh, Luke Shoemaker and other tight ends over there to help with that blocking and get some chips on Rashawn Gary because if this guy is the weak link on the offensive line, he'll have an absolute field day against them. And I think that's the kind of day we're looking for from Rashawn Gary.
Yeah.
Rashawn Gary hasn't had a sack since what looks like to be week 14, which was against I think the Giants. So yeah, he had one sack against Kansas City, but then he hasn't had one since.
Mm.
Um, so getting him to get back on track would be awesome. That's not to say he didn't have a lot of pressures in the game since then. He had three against the Giants, four against the Buccaneers, three against the Panthers, and then 8 against Minnesota. And then I think it says one here at the bottom against the Bears. But regardless of all that, like this is an opportunity for Sean Gary to show his worth. I don't like I think it's pretty obvious what he's worth to the Packers in the contract that they gave him, but go for it. Like this is your opportunity to go against a weak link on a stout line. Go help your other teammates get home. Like if he's consistently getting pressure, they have to account for him, which will change their sets, which will change what personnel they have to run out there. And if they're passing the ball and having to make Tony Pollard more of a run blocker than actually trying to run the ball, that will be awesome for them. Tony Pollard isn't having the greatest year in general as a running back, but I think he has opportunities to be very good at running the ball. Like for example, last year he went when the Packers faced the Cowboys at Lambeau. Tony Pollard went 22 for 115 and a touchdown. Like that's last year, obviously, but it's not like he's a bad back. He should be having a better year than he is, but I think
Yeah.
he still has that capability in him to do that any week of the year, I should say. He had a bad year for all intents and purposes of what his expectations were. He had 1,000 yards.
I was gonna say he still went over 1,000 yards.
Right. I think the difference is the yards per attempt is 4, when that should be probably a little bit higher for him. But he had a 1,000 yard year is 1,000 yard year. Like that's still pretty
Yep.
good. I think he just was more lackluster in the passing game, which was sort of a bit of his strong suit when he was um the there's a word for this, I can't think of it. Not backup, but the backup to Zeke Elliott.
He's the change of pace.
That thank you.
Yeah. That he I feel like with Tony Pollard in general, we're gonna focus on the CD Lambs, the Dak Prescotts, Jake Ferguson is not someone to like Packers just anybody that can do really well in the middle of the field as a tight end and a big body, they have historically struggled to cover. Um, Tony Pollard, though, again, we look at like I always I always bring up like Alexander Madison because like that scat back type of guy where he can yes, he might not be a suitable number one in terms of running back, like how you pull it out or anything like that. But he's still very explosive and a guy that can do some things in the passing game, maybe not to the level as he's shown when he was more the kind of change up to the Ezekiel Elliott's. Um, I he's not someone that you can't just be like, yeah, we're not gonna like key in on because he could easily just break up for a 20, 30 yard gain and you're looking, that you're flipping the field in a very uncomfortable way. So that's where like him on his own, yes, it's a down year or in terms of expectations, especially from a fantasy sense where you're looking at like, okay, they move on from Ezekiel Elliott. Cowboys historically are a good running team. Yes, Tony Pollard has been a 1,000 yard rusher before when he was sharing carries with Ezekiel Elliott. You think that would translate in a bigger, better way. It didn't happen necessarily this year, but the Cowboys offense is better than ever, in part because they're leading in on the passing game more. And that he may not be like the first option that you go to, but third or fourth and a really dangerous Cowboys offense is not that bad either.
Right, exactly. And so being able to bring it back to like the line, if Tony Pollard's going to be helping out on Rashawn Gary, it totally takes with that facet of their offense. Like they'll still have to run the ball, and I'm sure they will try to run the ball, given that the Packers' run defense is still pretty shoddy. And if that's the case, just get a couple stops early to make them want to pass the ball, and then start teeing off. Like I think Joe Barry's been doing a really great job of keying up more blitzes rather than just doing their base blitz of blitzing four guys rather than five. But I think that's honestly the best way to do it is just start sending them as often as you can to put pressure on Dak, put pressure on Terrence Steele, and make sure they have personnel out there to stop the blitz because they have guys that can blitz the ball. We saw that last week with this front four and the edge rushers. Just try and get everyone involved to keep fresh bodies out there, rotate them in, and just try and make life for Dak Prescott hell.
Yep, absolutely.
Um, I guess sticking with the defense, and like the sticking with the Cowboys offense and the Packers defense, keeping the receivers just like I guess draped over the middle is going to be I think the biggest thing. Like they like we saw I think it was last week. It was the big DJ Moore gain last week when
Mm,
DJ Moore was covered by Jair Alexander on the outside, ran a slant route over the middle, just a short, probably 7 to 8 yard slant route up the field. Jair hands it off to Quay, who is late for the pass off, and he goes open for like 30 yards. There's going to be a lot of that, I think. And I'm looking at next gen stats, which is a wonderful tool. And a lot of CD Lamb's like biggest games come from like over the middle. It's not outside. Like it's routes
mm,
that run over the middle. Uh he'll get like curl routes on the outside, sort of come back shoulder throws, just like any talented wide receiver can do. But I encourage you to go look at CD Lamb's charts on Next Gen Stats for listeners because it really is emblematic of the kind of routes he runs, and there's a lot of stuff over the middle, particularly in games where he has big games. Um, in his game against I think it was the Dolphins. I forget which game he had 227 against. It was Detroit in that win. So that was they lost in weeks 14, 15, not 16, 17. My apologies from earlier. But in
yeah.
that game um, against the Lions, he had what looks like to be one, two, three, four, five, six catches of his 17 or of his 13. My apologies, that were caught over the middle, as well as his deep ball, the 99-yard touchdown or 92, whichever one it was, I forget, was a post route over the middle that he came back to go back towards the outside. So he like started over the middle and then was able to adjust his route based on the coverage of his cornerback and go for a huge touchdown. Like he's just a talented wide receiver overall, but he's not getting a lot of like slant routes or I'm sorry, just go routes on the outside to get open. He's using moves and really good moves to get open over the middle and really causing havoc, I guess, all season for defenses that way. I think that's going to be the biggest thing is can they figure out how to stop CeeDee Lamb over the middle and make him a boundary level receiver, which like to be fair, again, he can do. He's done it before, but I still think he's the most dangerous going over the middle.
Yes, and Dak Prescott loves throwing over the middle.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Like this is this is like the recipe for if you want Joe Barry to look like a sacrificial lamb, pardon the pun, or you know what I mean? Like if you just want to offer him up, like, yeah, this is the end of the line because all the zone coverage, all the things that we have talked about basically since the origin of this pod, like the biggest problem that the Packers have faced is always like the change off in zone coverages. So when one guy maybe takes a step too far in his zone, that's where you see the crease. It's always about timing. Dak Prescott, like he's had turnover problems in the years past. Not so much this year. He didn't really turn the ball over all that much. I think only 8 picks on the year, but he's really clued in on knowing when the defender is about to like change over and the guy is still running his route, which has usually been CeeDee Lamb. That has honestly probably been the best 1-2 connection. I know two and Tyreek were up there as well, but like I think that is for this season. If we're looking at this, moment in time,
Right.
Dak and Lamb are just too so dialed in with one another that they know how to like find each other no matter what route it is or anything like that. But like
Mm-hmm.
that is where I think we can go into like specific matchups. Like obviously Jair will be very critical and just facing him face or having him go against CeeDee Lamb right away. But it's the second level. It's the Quay Walkers, Devondre Campbell's. We saw, I mean, the Tampa game that I was at, like that was where they just feasted. Is that intermediary zone, and I that is maybe my biggest worry, or in terms of winning this football game, that is my biggest worry of how this defense will play because I just know Zach Dak is really kind of become very surgical in that sense.
Looking at next gen stats' um, breakdown of Dak Prescott's passer rating and sections of the field, he is above average from 0 to 10 in the middle in the left side, above average from 10 to 20 on the sidelines between 10 and 20, and then very good deep in the middle and on the right hand side of the field. Other than that, he's pretty high above or around league average for the rest of them. Like he's had a great year, like a really good year. But like listen to these numbers where he's in the green um, for uh, for his passer rating in these sections. Deep middle, has 137.9 passer rating. League average is 82. Deep right 132. Middle right 121. Middle left 147. And then short left, short middle is 106 and 98. Like he's just really accurate. Just had a really good year, frankly. And
Mm-hmm.
even his yellow areas, deep left 91, um, middle middle essentially 82.8, middle or short right 81.8. Like he just has been really good this year, is as simple as you can put it. But like we had mentioned, getting home and like having him be pressured is going to be the biggest thing. And so trying to limit CeeDee Lamb as much as you can, like even um last year, CeeDee Lamb went for I missed it now. I think he had 120 yards or something last year. It
Yes,
was
he did.
he had a big game with, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, two touchdowns to boot. Like he wreaked havoc on the Packers last year. I'm trying to see if I can find that specific game, but we'll see if I can vamp for a little bit. um, Regardless, it was just an interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about, right? Like, is Jair good enough, fast enough, big enough, frankly, to be able to keep up with CD? And if they don't, can somehow, some way, they Carrington Valentine or Corey Valentine keep up with CD Lamb? I think that's going to be a really big question.
Very. And then for all the attention that he deserves and that you key in on, again, I mentioned Jake Ferguson. Brandon Cooks is on this team. He's served a very valuable role for him for the Cowboys after trading for him.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was last offseason. Um, they have made it really work with how this team is, and especially a lot of controversy with Kellen Moore leaving, Mike McCarthy taking the reins as offense coordinator. So far, even though they won the division, they had five. Their losses look really bad, but that when it's on, it's like on to a very all league level kind of thing. So yeah, it's not an easy feat trying to cover CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, Brandon Cooks, Tony Pollard.
Right.
Is there anyone else I'm missing?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
For what it's worth, last year during the Packers game against the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb had four catches for about 60 yards over the middle, and then he had one touchdown that came from the slot lined up on the right, crossed over the middle for 40 yards. Was a touchdown there, and another deep post route towards the boundary for 30 more yards. But yeah, he ran about of his what looks like to be 15 routes or about that or so. Probably a lot more I'm looking at, but he ran more routes. Whether he had the ball or not is a different question. But of the times he was thrown to, I should say, a lot of them coming over the middle. Nothing over the right last year, but a lot of stuff off to the left towards the boundary within 10 yards, over the middle depth, and then deep off to the left as well. So
yeah,
I'm scared of him. I'll say it right now. I had this argument in
yeah.
Discord that CeeDee Lamb scares the bejesus out of me.
The hot piss out of you.
That's right. It becomes ice cold, freezing piss. Should we switch over to the offense for both sides, or for the Packers and then the Cowboys defense?
Yes.
Um, I think it's gonna be tough. This is a really good Cowboys defense. Deron Bland as the NFL record for most pick sixes this year.
Yeah, he's not. He wasn't even the starting quarterback. That is the craziest part. Trayvon Diggs goes down with a season-ending injury. I believe like week
It
three,
was early.
early. Deron Bland, rookie, steps up, leads the league in nine interceptions, five pick sixes, which is an NFL record.
For one season. Yeah,
Yeah,
just absolutely
crazy.
crazy. Um, Dallas has allowed the fifth fewest passing yards this year, 3,185, and the fourth lowest completion percentage at 60.5, 17 interceptions. Um, 3 games this year where the Cowboys have allowed um, opposing quarterbacks to a higher rating or higher a QB rating higher than 100, which is tough. Like that's a pretty good stat to have there. Um, those QBs were Josh Dobbs, Jalen Hurts, and Brock Purdy. One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah,
um, and then one game allowing over 300 passing yards versus the Seahawks, and 5 games of two or more allowed passing touchdowns, which I think translates into this next point. I'm going to mix these 2 points, Jordan. Um, Comes up quite well. They don't allow um, a lot of good quarterback games, but the Packers just maybe have the Cowboys defense kryptonite. Aaron Jones, in his 3 games against the Dallas Cowboys, has 62 rushing attempts for 370 carries, or I'm sorry, 370 yards and 6 touchdowns, and then 10 catches on 11 targets for 100 yards, which is crazy. Jones is the only player with 300. Wow, I just can't. Excuse me, folks. 100 yard rushing games against Dallas since 2017, which is when Aaron Jones came into the league. His 472 yards from scrimmage is the most he has against any non-divisional opponent as well. So, if there's something to be done here, there is a weapon that you have in your backfield that has been very good as of late. I think there's a few different ways they can go about this. The Packers can. They can either ride Aaron Jones until that doesn't work, or which I think they should start with. They should start feeding the ball early and see how well this Cowboys defense can stop the run. But then really, really spelling that run with the play action pass. Because as we talked about all season long, this is really the bread and butter of the Packers offense. And if you have a player like Aaron Jones who's capable of having games like he has had in the past against the Cowboys, obviously there's no correlation, there's no correlation uh, relationship here. But I think it's something that Aaron Jones gets up for. I don't know why, I don't know how, but there's always the classic give of
Homecoming,
maybe could be that.
Texas boy.
Yes, right. Yeehaw filler. Um, there's always the classic gif of Aaron Jones waving goodbye to the pursuing Cowboys defender as he runs in for a touchdown. Like that's a lot of Aaron Jones' energy against the Cowboys, and so I'm optimistic that they are going to ride Aaron Jones this game, and I'm really curious as to how they're going to really do the mixing and matching of the balance of do you feed Aaron Jones the ball every drive, or do you spell that with a lot of over the middle stuff between Jordan Love and Jaden Reed and Bill Belton and all this kind of stuff? You're pointing at me.
The biggest question or key, I would say, is that because I think in years past, I'm looking at Aaron Jones's playoff games, and a lot of the kind of criticism that Matt LaFleur has faced when the Packers have been in the playoffs. Obviously, a very different team this year compared to the teams that he assembled in the first 2 years of his time in Green Bay. But the biggest thing was you went away from Aaron Jones. Specifically, I'm looking at the stat line for the championship game against Tampa Bay. 6 carries, 27 yards, 4 receptions for 7 yards. Obviously, no touchdowns in either game. The 49ers game in 2022 is actually a lot more interesting. 12 carries, 41 yards, 9 receptions for 129 yards. So they did feature like the narrative that Matt LaFleur goes away from Aaron Jones in the playoffs is like half right and half wrong.
I think I'll let you continue to make your point, but I think the narrative comes from running the ball because I think
Yes, yes, that is
there's a stark difference between those two actions between obviously handing the ball off or running the ball or doing like screen passes or check down to Aaron Jones in the flat. Like I think that is a vastly different way that defenses cover that, and you have to the latter doesn't replace the former whatsoever.
yes. Now I feel like he's the talk of the house money. Like you're playing with house money. You're here when again, not to keep bringing this up, but like very few people had expectations that you'd be here in the first place. But now it's like, okay, you're this is the biggest game for the entire offense outside of Aaron Jones. Pretty much the whole team in a very, very save for a few exceptions. The game plan between do you trust your quarterback that is playing the best, not just the best ball that he's played all season, but like one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now in terms of just straight up performing? Or do you rely on the veteran guy who has clear success against the Cowboys, regardless if it's Jason Garrett as coach or now Mike McCarthy, and is kind of he's been in these moments. He has played up to his par is not really relevant in this. He is the lone guy that you could be like, I know he's going to have a level head in a playoff game, and I can trust him even if it doesn't go to plan. And he is playing very well. So I think trying to it'll be very interesting to see like their game plan, like the first 15 plays, whatever they I'm forgetting the name right now because it's late as we record, but like the scripted plays, there we go.
There you go.
The scripted plays that LaFleur and his coaching staff think of going into the game will kind of reveal everything else. Like we know the rhythms of like usually it's pound the ball to Aaron Jones for the first drive. We'll see what comes of it and see how we control the game from there on. But if that doesn't work, what does that look like the second drive, third drive, so on and so forth. And obviously, this is a small thing, but if I'm LaFleur, I know coin tosses are a big thing these days, conspiracy
Especially on the
theory,
pod.
everything, especially on the pod. Yeah, exactly. Um, you take the ball, you receive it. If you have to go out and you have to put your best foot forward.
I honestly don't.
I've never sounded more like Phil Simms on NFL Today.
I honestly don't know what the right choice is there. I don't want to go into a whole long bit about this because it doesn't honestly really matter. But I think there's detriments to both ideas of this, right? Like
Yeah,
obviously deferring to the second half is a very popular, very analytical choice to this. My my hesitancy is that the Cowboys defense is like coming ready to play. Micah Parsons has said he's sick of winning in the regular season. It's time to do it for real in the playoffs. Like he is going to come focused and he's going to come correct for this game. And I find it intimidating as a fan for again the seventh seed Packers playing very well to go up against this defense. First drive, team is like the fans are going to be into it. The defense is going to be into it. If they go three and out, that's just like a propulsion rocket to make this stupid analogy of the energy of the players, the fans, that stadium. Like it's just a very it's a gamble. It's honestly a
yeah,
gamble. If the defense comes out for the Cowboys and goes three and out and makes a sack or does anything that's going to be like really critical to how um, the fans get into the game, it's going to be bad, right? Same thing with
yeah,
the offense. If the Cowboys come out, drive the field, score touchdown against this bend but don't break defense, all that energy is going to feed back in the defense. Like this is going to be a hard game. And I think that like
very.
if you really believe that you can come out and get a hot start and quiet that crowd with a touchdown drive, by all means. But I think if there's hesitancy, then you just defer to the second half. You know what I mean? Just like try
I
and
do.
come out of
I
halftime
just
with your adjustments. But they've been really good in the second half of
they're a
this,
good second half team.
even after the losing streak that they've had.
Yes,
Like they were a really good team coming out of the half for most of the wins. Frankly, obviously the losses is a bit hard to make that argument for, but they made a lot of adjustments in their wins close to really
and
make sure.
losses
Well,
close.
right, that they come out after halftime adjusting what went wrong and not going insane. Literally the definition, all that stuff, repeating, yada yada yada.
My worry is that this Cowboys offense could just light them off the field by
That's
halftime.
right, and that's the thing, right? I don't. It's hard. It's a difficult
This is
decision. We
it's
spent. Go ahead. Sorry.
no. I'm just saying from an offensive perspective, and we know. I mean, we just mentioned it last week or about last week's game where they scored 17 points, but we know that that was not a 17-point game based on how much yardage they had, how look at all the guys that had really good games. You had a 300-yard passing game, you had a 100-yard rusher, you had a 100-yard receiving game from Gina Reed. this offense is very explosive. It's really coming to form at the right time. Obviously, carried them and propelled them to the playoffs. My thing is that you still need like a 99th percentile game to even go toe to toe with this Cowboys offense. And that is in part because of the faith that we both and a lot of people, if not all Packers fans, share in what this defense looks like against a good team. And we've seen them play against good teams and beat them down the stretch, like the Lions, the Chiefs. Um, but this is like the Lions offense has been good. Turnovers changed the complexion of that game. The Cowboys can maybe turn over the ball a couple times and it still might not matter because they could just do what they have done and Dak goes to Lamb and he might just spread up the rest of the field and the Packers are, leaving a wake of Packers defenders that can't tackle them. Like that is kind of it's so we're living on these kind of extremes with the defense and the offense that like trying to find that middle ground of what this game could be is really really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be hard, but I think there's opportunities for winning in this game if they get home against Dak a lot. If they properly use Aaron Jones and they get him going. Like I think that's the worrisome part of this, Jordan, is that say for example they have in their scripted plays a lot of Aaron Jones runs, right? And they go
Yeah.
three and out a couple times. That was the death knell for a lot of their drives earlier in the season. Is that when they had their scripted plays that didn't go well and they went three and out, went six and out kind of thing, they they just didn't they weren't able to get the running game going. They weren't able to get into a rhythm on offense, and they had to give up these long drives on defense. That was our biggest gripe with the defense and the offense this year is that well, you're not doing your defense any favors by going three and out or getting one first down and punting the ball away. That's a lot of time for that defense to be on the field. But my worry is that if they get into that similar groove or similar, I guess, doldrum, where that's the word of the pod apparently. They said it like three times now. That if they try to get Aaron Jones going earlier and fail, and they go three and out, and they try to get him going the second drive, and then they go three out again, that's probably I don't want to say the game because that's really pessimistic to say, but if they're giving up 14 points before they even get a first down, that's a pretty hard deficit to come back from given the atmosphere of AT&T, given the team that they're playing. So I think it's going to be important that they are able to get going early, which is again very Phil Simms analysis, where it's like, yeah, getting going early is a great way to win the football game, duh. But I think the balance early is going to be important, and to spell Aaron Jones, Bull Melton is on a tear right now. Feed your hot guy, feed Jaden Reed, see what Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave can do. Like there's chances here. There's talented players on this outside or in this game that can really cause havoc for some of the Cowboys defenders.
Not to make this even harder of how you game plan a win against the Cowboys. Um, just gonna throw it out here of their run defense. They've allowed 10 games of 100 rushing yards or more. This is Dallas. They've allowed two games in which they allowed 200 plus rushing yards to their opponents. The Buffalo Bills and the Arizona Cardinals. Um,
Two teams with standout running backs: James Cook for the Bills and James Conner and company for the Cardinals.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Um, yeah, I think that is ultimately the game where the balance and what Aaron Jones means again because this hot streak down the stretch, it does not come without Aaron Jones. But at the same time, Jordan Love has shown that hey, if I'm a focal point of the game plan, if you really trust me to do the same kind of things that I've proven over the course of the season, especially over the second half of the year, then let's do the game plan that way. Like I I don't envy the position that Matt LaFleur is in right now because the expectations about this Packers team is totally different than being the number one seed, hosting playoff games. The the road to the Super Bowl runs through Lambeau like it did against the last two times that the Packers were in the playoffs. All that stuff will be brought up in his face if things do not go well. Aaron Jones is, you know, we're thinking about it, or we're talking about it Sunday, and he has what 11 touchdowns on the or touches on the day.
Right.
Jordan Love struggles in ways that we haven't seen pretty much since I don't know what pick out a game early in the year, the Broncos game or the Raiders game. That's where like again, these are worst case scenarios, and obviously we're living the extremes right now. But those are the things that I really don't envy how people will receive this game if those things come to light because throwing that in Matt LaFleur's face with an entirely different team, the entire Andy Herman brought up the starting lineup of the Packers Cowboys from last year, and that is entirely different than what the Packers looked like in the years that they played in the playoffs
Right.
in the first couple of years under LaFleur. So like I don't know, like this is the tough part of like you got to the playoffs. Everybody's like, this you gotta put your best foot forward. I'm saying it right now. You gotta receive the ball. You gotta receive the ball if you are. But like that is like the crappy part of just like where it is now because it switches like, well, you're the underdog team, but we still want to see like your best performance
Mm-hmm.
against a really good Cowboys. We haven't even talked
Yeah.
about Micah Parsons.
No, not even a
Micah
little bit.
Parsons, like I will talk about it right now. He scares me for the reasons why Max Crosby dismantled the Packers offensive line.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were still reeling from the Bach news. I think around that time, that was like when all the reports and news came out that he was going to be out for the year because we were still like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe
When
it's
is
just
he
like a
coming
couple
back kind of
games.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Elton Jenkins missed a couple games. Like, if things were clearly not right with like the rotation between Rasheed Walker and Josh Nyman,
Yep.
Josh Myers, despite everybody saying he's playing the best football of his career, was going through rough patches. Now, like the offensive line, it's in a lot better shape.
Yep.
Rasheed Walker has been one of the most. I mean, everybody's been most improved from a lot of standpoints, but
Right.
we haven't talked about him for bad reasons.
Nope. He's been really
But
good.
Micah Parsons can be moved around a lot on the
All
line,
over the line. He has 14 sacks this year.
and that is recipe for disaster
Yep.
for this
Giving
offensive line.
different looks to a bunch of to a first year quarterback, to a bunch of young offensive linemen, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker and company. It'll be tough. Like whoever backs up Aaron Jones on like third down blocking, if that even is a thing. Like I know
Got
we
it. I bet it's
Patrick
Patrick
Taylor. It
Taylor.
has Patrick Taylor. It's going to be hard for him to pick up those blitzes from Micah Parsons in critical situations like that. But even like Demarcus Lawrence has been having a
I
really
was gonna
good
say
year.
Demarcus Lawrence,
He's
Dorrance Armstrong Jr. He had 7.5 sacks. He had a
yep.
good year.
This they're good up front. They're really good up front.
Dante Fowler's still on this team. I didn't even realize that.
Yep, he still exists.
Yes, he does.
He has 8 tackles and 4 of them are sacks. I'm sorry, 13 tackles and 4
Crazy.
of them are sacks. Um,
Just crazy.
but yeah, you're exactly right that it's going to be difficult to stop the front part of this defense from the Cowboys, and if they can, that's a good recipe. I pulled up Peter Bukowski's Twitter because he had something that I thought he had, but I wasn't able to find. But I did in the process find a couple of interesting things that he had noticed. Um, Watching the Cowboys and Niners game, the Niners had success with interior runs, which the Packers don't do that often, but I would like to see them do more of. Like I think the interior runs between the guards, or between the tackles rather, went very well for Aaron Jones his last 3 games. A lot of play action, which is again the same idea, and then just like trick plays that they had success with. But for all intents and purposes, it was just um, attacking the spine, as he says, of that defense. And I guess I don't want to say we're ending in case you have more to say, but this is um an interesting stat. The Packers obviously have never lost in at AT&T Stadium,
Yes,
and the Cowboys haven't lost at home in almost 2 years, which is insane. So that's
that is
like
insane.
two streaks colliding, and we'll see who comes out on top. Do you have anything
Should we go?
else?
No, I think now we're in players to watch mode. I think there's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
tasty smorgasbord.
Yep. So let's do players to watch. I believe I went first last week, so I'm giving you the privilege of going first this week.
Um, Aaron Jones. He is the biggest. Again, he's the ceiling raiser for this Packers team. This offense is good. I trust him most. I would say even more than Jordan Love right now. That might be apocryphal um of me to say, but I think based on past success, based on how he's playing right now, he can really he there's a scenario where they play a very uh possession heavy extend drives, run out the clock, and Aaron Jones finishes with like 120 yards. Basically, what his stat line has looked like the last couple of weeks.
You're saying a game like the Bears game.
Game like the Bears game, Vikings game, Panthers game. I think that is possible.
I'm not saying stat wise. I'm saying length of drives. Like
Oh yeah, yeah,
think about how the
yes,
Bears game
yes.
was
Yep,
so short and like literal time wise because there was a lot of running on both sides of the ball, particularly from the Packers side of the ball. And like just if you're going to be running that often, keeping that offense off the field, that is one of the better ways that you can. One of the better chances you have to be in the Cowboys is just keep the offense off the field.
yep, absolutely. So yeah, I just think if they somehow pull a huge upset, I think Aaron Jones would be at the center of it.
Um, yeah, that won't surprise me whatsoever. I'll go my Packer first as well. I'm going to go with Jaden Reed. Uh,
Ooh,
Jaden Reed has scored a touchdown in 6 of the Packers' 8 road games and has scored in 5 straight road games for them. There's a weird thing for that again. Peter Prokowski was talking about that Jordan Love has played weirdly a lot better on turf than he has on grass. Like his passer rating on turf is 108.6, and on grass it's 91.4.
interesting.
Outdoors it's 91.2. Indoors it's
I
122.2.
was gonna say indoors. I mean, it's the Rodgers thing too.
Yep.
I mean, Eddie, great quarterback.
Right. And so he just plays well indoors on turf. And so that's a thing. But to go with that, um, Jaden Reed is just playing very good on turf. And if they can really hone in on Jaden Reed's specialties and get him the ball in space and use his speed, I have no doubt he'll be able to have a pretty massive game changing swing on this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, Aaron Jones and um, Jaden Reed for the Packers players to watch for us. Plus, I got his jersey last week, so I kind of had to do it. My Cowboy is predictably CeeDee Lamb. I said it earlier. He scares the ever living bejesus out of me. I'm very afraid of what he's going to be able to do against most of this defense. He's 6'2". I think he's got a solid at least 2 inches on all of the Packers cornerbacks. I think it's Carrington Valentine. I might be mistaken. That is the 6 footer
You're gonna
in
be
their secondary.
shorter.
Right, but I know that like Jair's like 5'10",
Yeah.
and then I'm looking up now since I'm already on Pro Football Reference. Corey Ballantyne is 5'11", and Carrington Valentine is 6 feet. So he's
That's a
their.
small secondary.
That's what I'm saying is that like he has 2 inches and a lot of hops against these the secondary, and so we'll see. I think he has every opportunity to go for 150 and 2 touchdowns, like just like he did last year. The difference is that if that's going to beat you, you can't let anybody else beat you. Like that's if you're going to allow those kind of stats, then you can't be giving up 100 yards on the ground to Tony Pollard like he did last year. Like we talked about it pre-pod, but that game last year we think about it as a blowout because Christian Watson had scored 3 touchdowns. I literally just stole your sentence word for word from when we talked pre-pod, but the game
I didn't
was
hear it.
the game went to overtime and the Packers won 31 to 28 with like 3 minutes to go in overtime. Like that was a close game.
Yeah.
And so I think it might be close again. We'll get into player or score predictions in a minute, but yeah, CeeDee Lamb has the opportunity to really set the Packer secondary ablaze, and I would expect him to, unfortunately.
Micah Parsons gonna be mine. Cowboy to watch. He's tremendous. He's a really good player. I again, I just, I, my trust level on this offensive line is good, but we're talking about the best edge rusher. Not even just, it's not just edge rusher. He can do so many different things and do them so well. He's one of the best players in the NFL, and this is his third NFL season. And considering his comments about, he doesn't want to lose, I, what
Guess how many pressures Micah Parsons has on the year?
almost has like a half of the Cowboys in total. I'm gonna guess like 80, 81. Higher, 90, higher, 100.
103 pressures from Micah Parsons according to PFF this season.
Is it? That's gotta be the most.
Probably is close. Like I talked, PFF doesn't really show us. I can try and find it in a minute, but yeah, 69 hurries, 18 hits and 16 sacks according to PFF's measure. Obviously, he
Yeah,
said
that.
he had 14 according to ESPN, but
Yeah,
take it out what you will. That's a lot of effing pressures.
a lot of pressures here. I'm curious. I want to see what it is, but yeah, they it's the versatility off the line. That is the league leading pressures.
I was
Aiden
trying to go
Hutchinson
for
was,
PFF refuses to load for me.
yeah, it was very slow for me. Aiden Hutchinson was the only other one defender that went over 100, which is still crazy. Like you don't need that three digits to be like, oh, that was really great, but
Yeah.
103, that is crazy. That is what we're talking about. The caliber player of that you have to guard at every single position.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like everybody on that line will at least have one rep against them because of just how they use them. And it trickles on down, the offensive line, how they protect. Can the running back get him, double team him, whatever? And how does that affect Jordan Love, who might have to make throws off platform, on the run, all that stuff. So yeah, Michael Parsons is going to be the key to just dismantling this Packers team if that's how it happens.
It looks like PFF has a stat that is called what I'd imagine is pass or pressures per game. I'd imagine it's PRP, a formula that combines sacks, hits, and hurries relative to how many times they rush the passer. And yeah, it looks like it's an average per game. 12.6, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, Jordan. Like that's bonkers. It's bonkers. So, all right, we have our players to watch. Score predictions. I really got to go first on this one, huh? Oh man. Oh man. What do I think is going to happen? Because as we had talked about, oh my god, my browser is going bonkers. Uh as we had talked about, this is going to be a really tough game for the Packers. This is going to be a game where, as you mentioned, they need a 99th percentile game to, I think, have a chance in this matchup. Just because they're not really turnover prone. Uh, they make a lot of turnover. They can't think of the word, but they are good. Is pretty putting it pretty plain and simple. I believe I saw a stat that in every game they've lost the turnover battle. So that's tough from the defensive side of the ball for the Packers because the Packers don't generate a lot of turnovers. That's the word I was looking for. Um, and to win the turnover battle, you have to get them, and to lose it, you have to again get them. or not make
Mm-hmm.
any mistakes to begin with. And so it'll be tough. It'll be tough. I'm looking towards Jaden Reed, Bull Melton, and Dontavian Wicks to have really good games. Like honestly, even if Christian Watson's coming back, I don't think I want him as like the guy out there every passing play. Ride the guys that got you here, right? Ride the guys that are hot. Phrasing, my apologies. Um, I'm going to go. Oh, it's such a difficult question, Jordan. 33 to 20 Cowboys.
33-20.
Yep. Yeah,
I am
I
doing.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go.
No, you finished your
I was
analysis.
gonna say I think that they just are too locked in for a young team like this. Like I don't want this team to have young team jitters, but this is your first playoff game. It's on the road in a hostile environment. Like if they win this game, Jordan, this will be a feat of feats um
Yes.
for any team in the NFL.
38-20 Cowboys.
That's appropriate. All right. That's it, folks. We appreciate you listening. We're both excited to watch the game. Like
We are. I am.
I'm really
I
excited
am
to
actually
watch it.
excited.
I think
Yeah.
what is going to be the most, I guess, upsetting is if they beat themselves. Like I would be very content if they go out there and get in a rhythm and they punt a couple times, but they ultimately score. Like these two scores that we said, I'm fine with, frankly. If it means they on offense at least they're not beating themselves.
Yes.
If it's on defense where it's a lot of maddening Joe Barry stuff,
If it's the
zone,
Tampa Bay game, that's
yes,
where it's like,
precisely.
yeah,
Which I think Joe Barry talked about today in the press conference, saying that he had to learn from that coaching, like from that experience
keep
of
better.
right. Well, that's what I was like. I think that's what they were saying. They're like, hey, in against Tampa Bay, you did your best to limit Mike Evans and Rashad White, but what you didn't do was
It's
limit
just Godwin.
Chris Godwin. And he goes, "Yep, like that was totally on me, and I understand. Like that was a an experience that I had to learn from moving forward." And hey, if let's see how it goes because if you stop CeeDee Lamb and stop Tony Pollard, um, I forget if they still have Michael Gallup on that team or on this team. Looking at the receiving yards, Jake Ferguson is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is your guy if you're gonna like forget about a guy. He can hurt you. Michael Gallup is still on this
Eight
team.
touchdowns on the year. Yeah, okay. Michael Gallup, he's not like a heralded receiver. There was a reason why they went after Brandon Cooks in the
Mm-hmm.
offseason to upgrade on him. But guy that could easily have a moment. Like
But
that is the thing. Like I don't discredit any of the guys, the skill position guys that I think could run wild on this Packers defense.
yeah, but like Jake Ferguson, up that of Wisconsin lore, old nine fingers himself. Like if he has capabilities, he has 5 TDs this year and 700 yards. So all right, folks, that does it for us. I'm excited. We just said this. We just had another extra 5 minutes on this pod because we're excited, but it's gonna be a good game, and at least we hope so. And if anything, like I said at the beginning of the pod, it's all gravy. So thank you all for listening. Go check us out on Twitter and subscribe to me at Numac is known, at Jordan Tresky. Press the subscribe button in your podcast player to subscribe to our feed, along with the other GSPM pods at Eurostep. And I should at Eurostep, the Bucks feed with Eurostep with Ty and Rohan, who just finished recording a live episode as the Bucks absolutely beat the bricks off of the Boston Celtics to the point where NBA on TNT had to turn off the game because they thought it was so bad, and they got bullied to turning it back on. Check out all the baseball news from Adam and Andrew over on Cruising for a Bruising, as well as their Junk Drawer pod with award season coming up with all the movies and TV shows and things like that. So, like I said, rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. Go subscribe to the YouTube. No promises because I don't exactly know Jordan and I's schedule yet, but we might be going live on Sunday depending on how it goes. Maybe, who knows? Life comes at you and it's supposed to be like literally 0 degrees in Milwaukee.
That is the thing. It's a hunker down
It's a
weekend.
hunker down weekend. So with all that being said, folks, again, thank you for riding with us all season long into now this postseason game. Um, really appreciate all of you. And Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.